Everyone overlooked the old inherited grandfather's house, but the youngest cousin noticed something hidden. The Mitchell family had been gathered for 3 weeks, trying to decide what to do with the property Grandpa Harold had left behind. All the relatives wanted to sell quickly and split the money, but no one even wanted to visit the place. That's when Tyler, the youngest of the grandchildren, just 22 years old, decided to go there alone. His cousins and uncles thought he was wasting his time, but something inside him said he needed to know that land before agreeing to sell it. Tyler parked the borrowed car on the dirt road and walked the last few meters to the property. The grass was tall and golden, swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. The main house was indeed in poor condition, with the roof partially collapsed and windows without glass. But there was something there he couldn't explain. "Hey, kid," said a voice behind him. Tyler turned and saw a man of about 60 approaching. He had graying hair and simple work clothes. "You must be one of Mr. Harold's grandsons. I'm Walter. I've lived next door for over 40 years. "Oh, hi, I'm Tyler. I came to take a look at the property before the family decides to sell." Walter shook his head with a sad smile. "It's a shame you all want to get rid of this place. Your grandfather loved this land too much. He worked here every day until just a few months before he passed." "Every day?" Tyler was surprised. "But he lived in the city." "He did, but he came here religiously, said he had a special project." Walter pointed to an area behind the main house. "He spent hours working in that shed back there." Tyler looked in the direction indicated and saw a smaller building, better maintained than the house. "My family never mentioned that." "Maybe he didn't want to bother anyone. Mr. Harold was a private man." Walter hesitated for a moment. "But if you want to know more, I can show you a few things." As they walked toward the shed, a stray dog came running to meet them. It was brown and white, with slightly scruffy fur, but bright, friendly eyes. "This is Buddy," said Walter, petting the animal. "Your grandfather adopted him about 3 years ago. Ever since Mr. Harold passed, he's been here waiting." Tyler crouched down to pet the dog, who wagged his tail excitedly. "And who takes care of him now?" "I bring food every day. I don't have the heart to take him home because he doesn't want to leave this place. It's as if he knows his owner is coming back." Tyler's heart tightened. He had never heard about the dog, nor that his grandfather spent so much time on this property. "Walter, can I ask you something? Why didn't my family know about any of this?" The neighbor sighed and stopped walking. "Look, son, I don't know if it's my responsibility to tell, but your grandfather asked me to take care of a few things if something happened to him. And he also said that if one of the grandchildren ever came here alone, showing genuine interest, I should show them what he was doing." "What was he doing?" "Come on, I'll show you." They reached the shed, which was locked with a padlock. Walter took a key from his pocket. "He left me the spare key." When the door opened, Tyler was speechless. The inside of the shed was completely organized and clean. There were workbenches, tools carefully arranged, and on an entire wall, dozens of old photographs of the Mitchell family. "My God," Tyler murmured, approaching the photos. There were images he had never seen before. His grandfather as a young man, his grandmother who had passed 10 years ago, pictures of the children when they were small, weddings, births. It was like a memorial of the entire family. "But that's not all," said Walter, pointing to a table in the center of the shed. On the table were several open notebooks, with the careful handwriting of Grandpa Harold. Tyler approached and began to read, "Mitchell Family Project, so we never forget who we are." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Tyler flipped through the notebooks with a racing heart. His grandfather had spent years documenting the entire family history, not just dates and names, but full stories, anecdotes, recipes passed down through generations, even the location of important items that had been lost over the years. "He was writing our history," Tyler said, his voice choked. "And not just that." Walter pointed to another section of the barn. "Look here." There was a large shelf with glass jars carefully labeled. Each contained seeds. Seeds. Seeds of every plant your family has cultivated on this land over 4 generations. Your grandfather told me his great-grandfather brought some of these varieties from Europe when he immigrated to the United States. Others were developed right here by the family. Tyler picked up one of the jars. The label read, Grandma Mary's Tomatoes, 1943. Original source recipe is in the red notebook. This is incredible, he whispered. There's more, son. Walter went to a trunk in the corner of the barn. Your grandfather kept this here with great care. Inside the trunk were letters, old documents, some jewelry that Tyler recognized as his grandmother's, and a sealed envelope with his name written in his grandfather's handwriting. With trembling hands, Tyler opened the envelope. My dear grandson Tyler, if you are reading this letter, it means Walter has judged that you came here with an open heart. I always knew that among all my grandchildren, you would be the one who best understood the value of simple things. This place is not just a property to be sold. It is the heart of our family. Every piece of this land tells a story. Your great-great-grandparents felled the first tree here in 1890. Your great-great-grandmother planted the first vegetable garden where weeds grow today. I know your family thinks I'm just a sentimental old man, but here in this barn is gathered all of our history. Do not let it be lost. If you are reading this, it is because you have the opportunity to choose. You can agree with the others and sell everything, or you can fight to preserve our memory. I am not asking you to carry this burden alone. I am offering you an inheritance much greater than money. I am giving you the chance to be the guardian of our history. In the blue notebook, you will find instructions on how to transform this property into something that honors our past but also has a future. It is a dream I have cherished for years, but never had the courage to realize alone. The choice is yours, my grandson. But remember, money runs out. Memories are eternal. With all my love, Gramps Harold P.S. Take care of Buddy. He has been my best friend these last years. Tyler finished reading with tears in his eyes. Walter respectfully had stepped away and was outside the barn, giving the young man privacy. Tyler looked for the blue notebook and found it on a special shelf. Opening it, he saw detailed plans, calculations, and a complete proposal to transform the property into a center for preserving the region's rural history. His grandfather had dreamed of creating a space where families could come to learn what life in the countryside was like in past generations. He had designed an educational garden with the heirloom seed varieties, a storytelling space, and even a small museum of American rural life. Walter, Tyler called, coming out of the barn. Did you know about all this? I did. Your grandfather showed me the plans many times. He said he needed someone young and full of energy to put them into practice. But that must cost a lot of money. Look, son, your grandfather wasn't just sentimental, he was smart too. Walter smiled. He did a lot of research. There is support available for cultural projects like this one, and there's one thing you haven't seen yet. Walter led Tyler to the back of the property, where there was an area that seemed to have been recently prepared for planting. Your grandfather started planting seedlings of native fruit trees. He said that in 10 years, just from selling the fruit, the project would pay for itself. Tyler looked around, trying to take it all in. It was much more complex than he had imagined. And my family, how am I going to convince everyone? Only you can answer that, son. But I can give you a piece of advice your grandfather once gave me. Sometimes people just need to understand the real value of what they have. Tyler spent the rest of the afternoon in the shed, reading the notebooks and trying to understand the magnitude of his grandfather's project. When the sun began to set, he knew he had a difficult decision ahead. Walter, can I ask you something? Why didn't my grandfather tell this to my parents or my other cousins? He tried, son, but everyone was too busy with their own lives. Your grandfather said he mentioned the project a few times at family gatherings, but no one showed any interest. Over time, he gave up insisting. And why would I be different? Because you came here alone, even when everyone said it was a waste of time. Walter petted Buddy, who hadn't left their side. Your grandfather always said you had curious eyes at family gatherings, that you asked questions about the past when others only wanted to talk about the present. It was true. Tyler had always been the grandson who was interested in the old stories his grandfather told. While his cousins were on their phones, He paid attention to the anecdotes about their ancestors. "Can I sleep here tonight?" Tyler asked impulsively. "Sleep? Son, the house is in ruins." "No, I mean, is there somewhere around here? I want to spend the night thinking before making a decision." Walter thought for a moment. "There's a room in the back of my house I don't use. You're welcome to it. And tomorrow, if you want, we can look at a few more things your grandfather left." "More things? Much more, son. What you saw today was just the beginning." That night at Walter's house, Tyler couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his grandfather's letter, the notebooks filled with history, and especially about the reaction his family would have when they found out about all of it. His parents, uncles, and cousins had scheduled a meeting for next week to sign the sale papers. They even already had an interested buyer, a businessman who wanted to subdivide the land to build houses. Tyler knew that if he did nothing, in a month, all that history would be lost forever. The next morning, Walter woke him with coffee and homemade bread. "Sleep well?" "Hardly at all," Tyler admitted. "I kept thinking about everything." "That's normal. Important decisions shouldn't be made in a hurry." "Walter, you said yesterday you had more things to show me." "I do. Come on, let's have breakfast first, and then I'll take you to see the rest." As they ate, Walter told more stories about Grandpa Harold. How he always arrived at the property early, worked until noon, ate a sandwich he brought from home, and spent the afternoon organizing the notebooks or tending to the plants. He was methodical, never did anything by chance. Walter poured more coffee for Tyler, and he had an incredible memory. He remembered details from conversations you had years ago. "What kind of details?" "Well, for example, he told me that once you asked where the sunflower seeds your grandmother planted in the backyard came from, and that you were upset when she passed away and no one knew the answer." Tyler almost choked on his coffee. He remembered that conversation perfectly. "I was about 15 at the time." Did he remember that? He did, and he went looking for the answer. Walter smiled. "Come, I'll show you." They went back to the property, and Walter took Tyler to an area that had gone unnoticed the day before. There was a small homemade greenhouse, well kept and organized. "Look here," said Walter, opening the greenhouse door. Inside, Tyler saw dozens of sunflower seedlings in little pots, carefully labeled. "Grandma Margaret's sunflowers," he read aloud, moved. "Your grandfather managed to trace the origin of the seeds. Your grandmother had received them from an Irish friend who brought them from Europe. He grew an entire generation just to preserve the original variety." Tyler gently touched one of the seedlings. "How many more surprises does this place hold?" "Son, your grandfather worked on this project for 5 years. Every corner of this property has a story to tell." They spent the entire morning exploring. Tyler discovered there was a small area where his grandfather tried to recreate traditional recipes for preserves and sweets that the family made decades ago. There were even notes about how his great-grandmother prepared a papaya sweet that no one else knew how to make. How did he get all this information? Your grandfather was persistent. He visited distant relatives, sought out old neighbors, even went after people who worked for his family in the past. Walter pointed to a specific notebook. There are over 50 recipes he recovered in there. Tyler leafed through the recipe notebook. Each page was a treasure trove of culinary memories he thought were lost forever. "Walter, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Why are you doing all this? Why take care of my grandfather's projects even after he's gone?" Walter stopped organizing the seed jars and looked at Tyler seriously. "Because your grandfather saved my life once." "How so?" 15 years ago, I lost my job and was going through a very tough time. Your family didn't really know me. We were just neighbors who waved from a distance." Walter sat on a wooden bench. "But your grandfather noticed I was in trouble. He showed up at my house one day and offered me work helping him on the property." "He hired you?" "Not exactly. He said he needed someone to help with the project but couldn't pay a salary. In return, he'd give me half the harvest from the vegetable garden we'd plant together." Tyler sat down next to Walter. "Did it work out?" "It worked out better than well, son. Your grandfather taught me how to grow quality vegetables. With my share, I started selling at the town market. Within 2 years, I was earning more than at my old job. That's why you feel obligated to look after his things." It's not an obligation. It's gratitude. Walter looked around the property. And besides, I believe in his dream. I think this place can really make a difference in the lives of many families. At that moment, Tyler's cell phone rang. It was his mother. "Hi, Mom." "Tyler, where are you?" "Your father is worried. You left yesterday morning and didn't come home." "I'm at Gramps' property, Mom. I spent the night at a neighbor's house." "At the property?" "Honey, what kind of nonsense is that? That place doesn't even have proper facilities to stay." "Mom, I need to talk to the whole family before the meeting next week." "Talk about what?" "It's already decided. We're going to sell and split the money." Tyler looked at Walter, who gestured for him to speak freely. "It's not all decided, Mum. I've discovered things about Gramps that you all need to know." "What kind of things?" "I'd rather explain in person. Can you gather everyone this afternoon? It's important." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Tyler, I hope you're not creating unnecessary problems. Your Uncle Richard has already signed the preliminary contract with the buyer." Tyler's heart raced. "What do you mean? I thought we were going to decide together at the meeting." "The meeting was just to formalize it. The decision has already been made. You're too young to understand these things, son." Tyler felt a mix of anger and despair. "Mom, I have a vote in this decision, and I don't agree with the sale." "Tyler, don't be childish. Go home now. We'll talk when you're calmer." The call ended, and Tyler stared at his phone in disbelief. "Problems?" asked Walter. "They've already decided to sell. They didn't even consult me properly." "And what are you going to do?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Tyler ran his hand through his hair, nervous. Legally, he had rights to the property as one of the heirs, but practically his family could make decisions by majority, and he was clearly in the minority. "Walter, can I ask you a favor?" "Of course." "Could you come with me to talk to my family? They need to see what Gramps was doing here." "Son, I don't know if that's a good idea. Your family might think I'm sticking my nose where it doesn't belong." "Please. You knew Gramps better than any of us in recent years. They need to understand." Walter hesitated, but seeing the desperation in Tyler's eyes, he agreed. "All right, but let's do one thing. Let's take some evidence. Some notebooks, some photos, so they see it's not just sentimentality." They spent the next hour carefully selecting materials that would show the Mitchell family the extent of Grandpa Harold's project. They chose rare photographs, some notebooks with the most impressive stories, and a folder with the economic plans for the cultural center. "Tyler, before we go, I want to show you one last thing," said Walter. They went back to the shed, and Walter went to a drawer they hadn't opened the day before. "Your grandfather asked me to give you this if you decided to fight for the project." Inside the drawer was an old ring and a key different from the others. "The ring belonged to your great-great-grandfather, the first Mitchell who arrived here, and the key—" "The key to what?" "Come, I'll show you." Walter took Tyler to an area at the back of the property where there was what looked like a metal lid, half hidden by vegetation. "Is this a basement?" "Not exactly." Walter used the key to open the lid. "Here's where your grandfather kept the family's most important documents. Inside the underground compartment, protected from moisture by plastic packaging, were dozens of historical documents, old birth certificates, original property deeds, period photographs, and even some letters exchanged between ancestors." "My God," Tyler whispered, picking up a letter from 1910 written by his great-great-grandfather. "Your grandfather said that if the family ever decided to sell, at least the historical documentation should be preserved. He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I would give access to these documents only to those who showed genuine interest in preserving the family history." Tyler was reading a letter from his great-great-grandfather to his wife, telling about the first years cultivating the land. "My dear Ruth, the first coffee seedlings are growing well. God willing, in a few years we will have a prosperous plantation here that will sustain our family for generations. Walter, this is the historical heritage of the entire region, not just my family." "Exactly. And that's why your grandfather dreamed of the cultural center. These stories don't belong only to the Mitchells. They tell the story of how this area was settled, how immigrant families established themselves, how they developed agricultural techniques adapted to American soil. Tyler carefully stored the documents and closed the compartment. Let's go to my house. It's time to face my family. On the way to the city, Walter shared more details about Grandpa Harold's last few years. He knew he was getting older and worried about what would happen to all his work, but he held out hope that one of you would take an interest. Why didn't he push harder? Why didn't he force the family to pay attention? Son, your grandfather was wise. He knew it's no use forcing anyone to value something. Either a person sees the value for themselves, or they won't take proper care of it. And what if I were like the others? What if I hadn't been interested? Then the project would have ended right there. Your grandfather was prepared for that possibility. Walter stopped at the red light and looked at Tyler. But he bet on you, said he was sure you'd come. How could he be so sure? Because you were always different from the others, son. At family gatherings, when your cousins and siblings got bored with the old stories, you paid attention, you asked questions, you wanted to understand. Tyler remembered the family gatherings. It was true. He was the only one interested when Grandpa started talking about the past. Maybe he knew me better than I knew myself. They arrived at Tyler's parents' house in the late afternoon. It was a modern house in a middle-class neighborhood, very different from the rural setting of the property. Tyler's mother, Mrs. Sharon, opened the door with a worried expression. "Tyler, you gave me such a fright." She hugged him tightly. "And you must be the neighbor he mentioned?" "Walter Johnson, ma'am. A pleasure to meet you. Please come in. Your father is in the living room with your uncles." In the living room were Tyler's father, Mr. Robert, and his two uncles, Richard and David. The three brothers were in their 50s and 60s and seemed to be discussing something seriously when Tyler and Walter entered. "Tyler, where have you been?" asked Mr. Robert, standing up to greet him. "Dad, I need to talk to you all about Gramps' property." "Son, we've already talked about this. The decision is made," said Uncle Richard, a businessman always in a hurry. "No, you made the decision without consulting me, and I've discovered things you need to know." Uncle David, the youngest of the brothers, sighed. "Tyler, we care about you deeply, but that property is nothing but a money pit. There's no point in getting sentimental." "It's not sentimentality," Tyler said, opening the folder he'd brought. "It's about knowing the truth." Tyler began showing the photographs and notebooks. As he explained his grandfather's project, the family's expressions changed from impatience to surprise. "Dad was doing all this by himself?" asked Mr. Robert, flipping through one of the notebooks. "Not by himself," said Walter, speaking for the first time. "He asked for my help, and I was deeply honored to take part." Mrs. Sharon was holding an old family photograph. "I've never seen this picture before." "Your father spent years searching for lost documents and photographs," explained Walter. "He visited distant relatives, tracked down old neighbors, even consulted the town's historical archives." Uncle Richard picked up the folder with the economic plans. "And this here?" "A project to turn the property into a cultural and educational center," said Tyler. "Gramps researched government support, partnerships with schools, everything." "But that must cost a fortune," said Uncle David. Walter spoke up. "I can explain the numbers if you'd like. Your father was very meticulous with the calculations." For the next hour, Walter detailed the economic plans his grandfather had developed. There was potential for government support for cultural projects, partnerships with universities for agricultural research, and even a financial sustainability plan based on selling organic products. "I don't understand," said Mr. Robert, confused. "Why did Dad never tell us this properly?" "Excuse me," Walter hesitated before answering. "But your father tried a few times. You were always too busy to pay attention." An uncomfortable silence filled the room. "Is that true?" Mrs. Sharon asked her husband. "Well, he sometimes mentioned some crazy ideas," admitted Mr. Robert. "But I never imagined it was something so elaborate." "They weren't crazy ideas," said Tyler, with a hint of irritation in his voice. "It was a serious, well-planned project that could preserve our family history and still be economically viable." Uncle Richard closed the folder of financial plans. "Look, it's all very interesting, but the sales contract has already been signed." Preliminary contract, corrected Tyler. We can still back out. With a penalty, reminded Uncle David. How much is the penalty? Asked Tyler. $10,000. Tyler thought quickly. He had some money saved, but not enough. What if I pay the penalty? Son, don't be impulsive, said Mrs. Sharon. It's not impulse, Mom. It's about preserving our history. Tyler, said Uncle Richard in a paternalistic tone, you're young, you have beautiful dreams, but you don't understand how the world works. Maintaining a rural property costs money. So what? Gramps' project shows how to make the property sustainable. On paper, maybe. In practice, it's very risky. Walter cleared his throat. May I give my opinion? As someone who worked directly with your father in recent years. Everyone looked at him. The project is viable. I helped develop several parts of it, and more importantly, your father laid the foundation. The fruit tree saplings he planted will start producing in the next 2 years. The educational garden already has all its seeds catalogued and organized. The physical space is already partially prepared. But what about the initial costs? Asked Uncle David. Lower than you imagine. Much of the most expensive work has already been done, and as I said, there is support available for projects of this type. Tyler saw a crack in the family's resistance. I can manage the project, he said. I just finished my business degree. I don't have a steady job yet. I could dedicate myself to this full time. And if it doesn't work? Asked his father. Then we sell. But at least we tried to fulfill Gramps' dream. Mrs. Sharon looked at the old photographs scattered on the table. I didn't know Dad had kept so much of our stuff. He kept it because he loved the family, said Tyler, and he wanted future generations to know their roots. Do you have young children? Walter asked Tyler's uncles. I have 2, said Uncle David. And can you imagine your children knowing their family history, learning about their great-grandparents, seeing what life in the countryside was like back in the day, understanding where they came from? Uncle David became thoughtful. That would be interesting, he admitted. That's exactly what the Cultural Center would provide, said Tyler, growing animated. Not just for our family, but for all the families in the region with a rural history. Uncle Richard was still skeptical. And the money from the sale? We were all counting on that cash. The project can generate income in the long term, argued Tyler. And more importantly, it can generate something money can't buy, family pride and the preservation of our history. Mr. Robert picked up one of the notebooks and began to leaf through it. My God, here's even the recipe for the milk candy Grandma used to make. Exactly, said Tyler. How many family recipes have we already lost? How many stories will never be told again? Gramps was trying to save all of that. There was a long silence in the room. Each family member was absorbed in their own reflections. May I suggest something? Said Walter, breaking the silence. Of course, said Mrs. Sharon. How about you all visit the property tomorrow, all together? So you can see in person what's been done so far. I think that's a good idea, Tyler agreed quickly. I don't know. Uncle Richard hesitated. We have commitments tomorrow. Uncle, it's just one morning, for a decision that will affect our family forever. Uncle David looked at his brother. Richard, I think we should give Dad this chance. At least go see what he was doing. After a few more minutes of discussion, it was settled that the whole family would visit the property the next morning. Uncle Richard reluctantly agreed to delay signing the final contract for a few more days. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That night, Tyler could barely sleep again. He knew the next day's visit would be decisive for his grandfather's project's future. If he could move the family, he'd have a chance to fulfill Gramps Harold's dream. If he couldn't, he'd see all that history lost forever. The next morning at 9 o'clock, the entire Mitchell family gathered at the property. Besides Tyler's uncles and parents, his 2 cousins, Uncle David's daughters, and his sister Jennifer, who had returned from college specifically for the meeting, also came. Walter was waiting at the property entrance, along with Buddy, who ran to greet Tyler excitedly. This is Gramps' dog, Tyler said, petting the animal. How cute, said Jennifer. I didn't know Gramps had a dog. His name was Buddy, Walter explained. Your grandfather adopted him about 3 years ago, and the two were inseparable. The family walked through the property while Walter and Tyler explained each area. The first stop was the main barn, where the notebooks and photographs were. Tyler's cousins, Emily and Ashley, aged 15 and 17 respectively, were especially interested in the old photographs. "Look how beautiful, Mom," said Emily, showing a photo of their great-grandparents' wedding. "They were so young." "And look at this dress," commented Ashley. "It's much prettier than today's wedding dresses." Mrs. Sharon was flipping through the recipe notebook with tears in her eyes. "Here's the recipe for the cookies Grandma used to make at Christmas. I looked for it for years and could never get it right." "Your mother wrote down all the little secrets," said Walter, "even the exact oven temperature and timing for each step." Jennifer was reading the notes about the family history. "Tyler, did you know our great-great-grandfather was one of the founders of the town's first school?" "I didn't. Where does it say that?" "Here, Gramps researched the town hall archives and discovered that our great-great-grandfather Benjamin donated the land to build the school in 1925. Uncle David was examining the plans for the cultural center. "These drawings are very well done. Did Dad do all this himself?" "He took a technical drawing course specifically for this project," Walter explained. "He said he wanted to present the idea professionally." When they reached the greenhouse with the sunflower seedlings, Mrs. Sharon couldn't hold back her emotion. "Are these really Mum's sunflowers?" "Yes, they are," Walter confirmed. "Your father managed to trace the seeds back to your mother's Irish friend. He cultivated several generations to ensure they were exactly the same as the originals." Uncle Richard, who had remained skeptical until then, carefully picked up one of the seedlings. "Dad did all this to preserve some simple seeds." "They weren't simple seeds," said Tyler. "They were a connection to our grandmother, to our history. How many times did you hear her talk about the sunflowers? How many photos do we have of her in the garden tending to the flowers?" "That's true," Richard admitted, his voice softer. "She loved those sunflowers." The next stop was in the underground compartment where the historical documents were kept. When Walter opened the area and showed the old letters, the whole family was impressed. "This needs to be in a museum," said Jennifer, carefully picking up a birth certificate from 1890. "That was exactly the idea of Gramps' project," explained Tyler, "to preserve it and make it accessible so others can learn about the region's history." Mr. Robert was reading a letter his great-grandfather had written to a son who had stayed behind in Ireland. Here he talks about the hardships of the early years, but also about the hope of building a better life. "These letters are important historical documents," said Walter. "They show the process of immigration and how foreigners adapted to rural America." "How many families in the region have similar stories?" asked Jennifer. "Many," replied Walter, "and most have lost almost all their documentation over the years. What your grandfather preserved is very rare." The final stop was in the area where the fruit tree saplings had been planted. Walter explained the project's financial sustainability plan. "In 3 years, these trees will start producing high-quality organic native fruits. The idea was to sell the produce to specialized markets and use the income to maintain the cultural center." "And does that really work?" asked Uncle Richard. "It does. Organic and native variety fruits have a growing market. Your father did a lot of research before choosing which trees to plant. Emily and Ashley were playing with Buddy among the saplings." "Dad, why can't we try?" Emily asked Uncle David. "Honey, it's not that simple. But Uncle Tyler said he can handle everything, and it would be cool to have a place like this for the family to gather." Ashley agreed with her sister. "And we could bring our friends to see it. It would be really cool for doing school projects on local history." Uncle David looked at his daughters and then at his brothers. "You see, the girls understand the importance better than we do." "Because they're young and dreamers," said Uncle Richard. "We have to be practical." "Richard," said Mr. Robert, "you saw how much work Dad put into this. We can't just throw it away." "It's not throwing it away, it's being realistic." Jennifer approached her uncle. "Uncle Richard, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "What are you going to do with your share of the money from the sale?" "I'll invest it in my business." "Why?" "And in 10 years, what will be left of it?" Richard didn't answer immediately. "I mean," Jennifer continued, "the money will be used, invested, spent. But if we preserve this project, in 10 years our children and grandchildren will still have access to our history." Jennifer is right, said Mrs. Sharon. Money comes and goes, but lost history never comes back. Tyler noticed the tide was turning in favor of the project. Everyone, can I suggest something? Go ahead, said his father. How about we give the project 6 months? I'll dedicate myself full-time to getting it up and running. If in 6 months it's not going well, then we sell. And the buyer? Asked Uncle Richard. We talked to him about a delay, suggested Mrs. Sharon. If he really wants the property, he can wait a little. Walter, who had remained silent throughout the family discussion, finally spoke. I give you my word that I'll help Tyler in every way possible. Your father taught me so much, and it would be an honor to continue his work. And I'll help too, said Jennifer, surprising everyone. I'm in my last semester of architecture. I can develop the space designs better. Really, said Tyler, excited. Really, I was thinking of a theme for my final project. This would be perfect. Emily and Ashley also offered to help on weekends and school holidays. Uncle David looked at his daughters with pride. If the girls are this excited, I think it's worth a try. Uncle Richard sighed deeply. You're all so optimistic, but... He stopped and looked around the property. Maybe Dad deserved us giving his dream a chance. Richard, does that mean you agree? Asked Mr. Robert. It means I'll accept the 6-month deadline, but with conditions. What conditions? Asked Tyler. First, you make a detailed monthly report of expenses and income. Second, if there are no concrete signs of progress in 3 months, we reassess. Third, any major financial decision has to be approved by all of us. I accept all the conditions, Tyler said quickly. And I'll help with the administration, offered Uncle David. I have project management experience. Mrs. Sharon hugged her son. I'm proud of you, Tyler, for having the courage to fight for what you believe in. And I'm proud to have a grandson who honors his grandfather's memory, said a familiar voice behind them. Everyone turned and saw Mrs. Dorothy, Grandpa Harold's younger sister, approaching, leaning on a cane. Aunt Dorothy, several exclaimed at once. Walter told me you were all here today. I couldn't miss it. Mrs. Dorothy was 78, and the only living person who had known the family's great-grandfather. Aunt, did you know about Dad's project? Asked Mr. Robert. Of course I knew. Harold told me everything, she smiled tenderly. And I always told him that one day someone in the family would value his work. Which of us did you bet on? Asked Jennifer, curious. Mrs. Dorothy looked directly at Tyler. This young man here, since he was little, he was different. He always asked questions about the past, always wanted to understand things. How were you so sure? Because he has my father's eyes. Mrs. Dorothy approached Tyler. Your great-great-grandfather was like that too. Curious, determined, and with a deep love for family and the land. Tyler felt a strong emotion hearing those words. Aunt Dorothy, do you think we can make Gramps' project happen? You will, my child. Because you have something money can't buy, love for your own history. And can you help us, asked Jennifer, with your memories, your stories? It will be a pleasure, said Mrs. Dorothy. I have many stories to tell, and some recipes that not even Harold managed to figure out. Uncle Richard, who until then had been the most resistant, approached his aunt. Aunt Dorothy, I'm sorry we didn't value Dad's work before. Richard, my child, you were living your lives. It's natural. But now that you've discovered the treasure he left, don't let it slip away. At that moment, Tyler was certain they had made the right decision. With the whole family united around the project, and with the support of Walter and Mrs. Dorothy, Grandpa Harold's dream could finally become a reality. When do we start? Asked Jennifer eagerly. Tomorrow, replied Tyler. We have a lot of work ahead of us. As the family prepared to leave the property that day, each carried with them a new understanding of what they had truly inherited from their grandfather. It wasn't just land or money. It was a legacy of love, history, and traditions that they now had the responsibility to preserve and pass on to future generations. Buddy ran alongside Tyler's car as he drove away, as if he knew his home would finally be cared for again. And Mrs. Dorothy waved from the window with a smile that said, Harold, your grandson didn't let you down. The first week of work was intense. Tyler moved temporarily into Walter's house to be near the property every day. Jennifer came every afternoon after classes to work on the architectural projects, and on weekends, Emily and Ashley would show up to help with organizing the documents. The first challenge was obtaining the necessary documentation to apply for government support for cultural projects. Tyler spent days at the City Hall, the Municipal Library, and the city's historical archive, gathering information about the historical importance of the property and the Mitchell family to the region. "I discovered something interesting," he said to Jennifer one afternoon while they were organizing the documents. "Our family not only participated in founding the town's first school, our great-grandfather also helped build the first chapel and the first agricultural cooperative." "Really? That greatly increases the project's historical importance." "Exactly. And there's more. I found records that several agricultural techniques used in the region today were developed or improved by our great-great-grandfather and other settlers of the time." Jennifer was drawing on her tablet, creating a modern and detailed version of the plans her grandfather had sketched. "Tyler, look at this. I managed to adapt the original project to meet current accessibility standards without losing the rustic charm Gramps planned." Tyler looked at the drawings and was impressed. Jennifer had created discrete ramps, adapted bathrooms, and suitable pathways for people with reduced mobility, all harmoniously integrated into the original design. "It's perfect. Gramps would be proud. And look at this area here." Jennifer pointed to a section of the drawing. "I thought about creating a covered space for activities on rainy days. It could be used for workshops, presentations, or simply as a rest area for visitors." While the two worked, Walter tended to the plants and continued maintaining the already developed areas. He had also taken on the responsibility of contacting other farmers in the region who might be interested in contributing to the project. "I spoke with Mr. Benjamin, who has a property about 3 miles from here," Walter reported during lunch. "He has heirloom corn seeds that his family has been cultivating for over 100 years. He wants to contribute to the collection of traditional seeds." "That's wonderful," said Tyler. "And would he be interested in participating as a collaborator on the project?" "Very interested. In fact, he mentioned he knows other producers who have preserved old varieties of vegetables." "That could become a regional seed bank," suggested Jennifer. "Imagine the scientific and cultural value of that." Each day the project grew and gained new dimensions. What had started as a way to preserve the Mitchell family history was transforming into something much bigger, a center for preserving the rural culture of the entire region. At the end of the second week, Uncle Richard showed up at the property for the first official monitoring visit. "How are the expenses so far?" he asked, grabbing a notebook to jot things down. "Well controlled," replied Tyler, showing a detailed spreadsheet. "So far we've only spent on basic organizational materials and some essential repairs to the barn. The total came to $1,800. "Less than I expected," admitted Richard. "And the revenues?" "There are no direct revenues yet, but we secured an important donation," said Jennifer, arriving at the moment of the conversation. "A donation? The Municipal Library will donate about 200 old books on agriculture and regional history. In return, we promise to create a space in the Cultural Center for temporary exhibitions about the town." Uncle Richard noted the information and the government support. "Tyler submitted the application last week," informed Walter. "And we had some good news. The State Cultural Department showed a lot of interest in the project." "How so?" Tyler brightened as he explained, "They're developing a program to value rural heritage, and our project fits perfectly. If we get approved, we could receive financial and technical support." "How much support?" "We don't know for sure yet, but the technician who came for the initial assessment said similar projects received between $30,000 and $50,000. Uncle Richard stopped taking notes and looked at Tyler with renewed interest. $30,000 to $50,000? That would cover a good part of the implementation costs. "Exactly, and there's something even better." "What?" Jennifer jumped in to answer. "The State University wants to partner with us. They're interested in using the center as a research site for traditional agriculture and heirloom seed preservation." "And what would the benefit be for us?" "They'd provide free technical support, some equipment and volunteer students to help with activities," explained Tyler. "In return, they could use the site for research and practical classes." Uncle Richard closed his notebook with a thoughtful expression. You've accomplished a lot in just 2 weeks. And there's more news, said Walter, smiling. Tell him about the senior group. Tyler smiled. Oh yes, Mrs. Dorothy mentioned the project at her church, and now we have a group of 10 seniors who want to help. Help how? They have various traditional recipes they'd like to teach, and some know old artisanal techniques like making cheese, wood-fired oven bread, homemade sweets. That would add a lot of value to the project, commented Jennifer. We could offer traditional culinary workshops. Uncle Richard shook his head, impressed. You've turned your dad's idea into something much bigger than he imagined. We didn't turn it, corrected Tyler. We just discovered the potential that was already there. Gramps planted the seed, we're helping it grow. That night, Uncle Richard called his brothers to give the first official report. Robert, David, I have to admit, I underestimated the project's potential. How so? Asked Mr. Robert. In 2 weeks, they've secured more support and partnerships than many businesses get in months, and they're spending much less money than I imagined. And you think it has a chance of working? Not only does it have a chance, it is working. Tyler has a natural talent for articulating partnerships, and Jennifer is perfectly complementing him with the technical side. Uncle David, who was on the conference call, spoke up. And the girls are super excited. Every weekend they ask to go help out there. You know what else impressed me, continued Richard. The project is growing organically. Everyone who learns about it wants to contribute in some way. That's a very positive sign, agreed Mr. Robert. And there's something I hadn't thought of before. This project could add value to all the rural properties in the area. If it really becomes a center for tourism and education, it will bring benefits to the whole community. At the end of the 3rd week, the first official meeting with representatives from the state's culture department took place. Tyler was nervous but confident in the work they had developed. The meeting was held at the property itself, so the technicians could see firsthand what was being done. Impressive, said Dr. Margaret Thompson, coordinator of rural cultural projects. You've preserved an extraordinary amount of historical documentation. And the state of preservation is very good, added her assistant, Dr. Stephen Anderson. It's rare to find family collections so well organized and catalogued. Dr. Margaret examined Grandpa Harold's notebooks with special attention. These notes on traditional agricultural techniques have significant scientific value. Much of this information has already been lost in other regions. My grandfather was very meticulous, said Tyler proudly. And do you have plans to digitize this collection? It's on the schedule, replied Jennifer, showing the plans on the tablet. We want to create a digital archive for preservation and also to make it easier for researchers to access. Dr. Stephen was especially interested in the seed collection. You have varieties we thought were extinct in the region. This is a genetic treasure. Walter can explain more about the seeds, said Tyler. Walter detailed the conservation work he and Grandpa Harold had developed. The technicians grew more and more impressed. Well, said Dr. Margaret at the end of the visit, I can say in advance that this project is very much in line with our guidelines for valuing rural heritage. The approval of financial support is practically certain. How much would the support be? Asked Tyler. For a project of this quality and scope, we're talking about $45,000 plus ongoing technical support. Tyler had to hold himself back from visibly celebrating. And what would be the next step? You've already submitted all the necessary documentation. In 2 weeks we'll have the official answer. But, as I said, you can rest easy. When the technicians left, Tyler, Jennifer, and Walter hugged in celebration. We did it, said Jennifer, jumping for joy. Easy now, said Walter, smiling. It's not official yet. But you saw how impressed they were, argued Tyler. They loved the project. That night, Tyler called the whole family to give the good news. The reaction was one of general euphoria. Son, I'm so proud, said Mrs. Sharon, emotional. Your grandfather would be overjoyed. And I'm starting to believe it's really going to work, admitted Uncle Richard. $45,000 is an amount that completely changes the project's feasibility. Dad, can I make a suggestion? Said Jennifer. Of course. How about we organize a small party at the property to celebrate? We could invite the neighbors. the people from the town hall who have been helping, the ladies from Aunt Dorothy's church. Good idea, agreed Uncle David. It would be a way to thank everyone who has supported us. And also a way to promote the project, added Tyler. The more people who know about it, the more support we'll have. The party was scheduled for the following Sunday. During the week, the family organized to prepare everything. Cousins Emily and Ashley were in charge of decorations. Mrs. Sharon and the sisters-in-law would take care of the food, and the men would organize the space. I'll try to make that papaya sweet from our great-grandmother's recipe, said Mrs. Sharon. It will be a test to see if we can really recover the old recipes. And I'll prepare the bread in the wood-fired oven that Gramps Harold built, offered Walter. I still know how to light it and regulate the temperature properly. On Saturday, the day before the party, the whole family worked together on the property. It was the first time in years that all the Mitchells had gathered to work on a common goal. You know, Uncle Richard said to Tyler while they were setting up the tables, it's been a long time since I've seen the family so united. It's true. I think the project is doing more than preserving history. It's creating new family memories. Your grandfather would be the happiest person in the world if he could see this. Who's to say he isn't seeing it, said Tyler, looking at the sky. On Sunday, the guests began to arrive. The neighbors came, including Mr. Benjamin with his heirloom corn seeds. 5 of the 10 ladies from Aunt Dorothy's church showed up, each bringing a dish prepared with traditional recipes. The technicians from the town hall also came, as did some teachers from the municipal school who had shown interest in the project's educational potential. So many people came, exclaimed Jennifer, surprised by the turnout. More than 50, counted Emily, excited. And there are people we don't even know. It's the power of word-of-mouth communication, explained Walter. When a project is good, people spread the news naturally. During the party, several people offered to contribute to the project. One gentleman brought old documents about the history of the region. A lady offered to teach fruit preservation techniques. A young history teacher expressed interest in bringing his students for educational visits. Do you see how much potential the project has? Said Tyler to his uncles. People are thirsty for a connection with their roots. The most emotional moment of the party was when Mrs. Dorothy asked to speak, to give a speech. My dears, she said, her voice firm despite her age, today I see my brother Harold's dream becoming reality in a way even he hadn't imagined. All conversations ceased, and everyone present paid attention to the matriarch's words. Harold always said that family was the most precious thing a person could have, and that preserving family history was a way to honor those who came before and bless those who will come after. Mrs. Dorothy paused, visibly moved. But today I see that this project has become bigger than our family. It has become a project for the whole community, and that makes me very happy, because it means the love my brother had for his traditions will benefit many other families. There was spontaneous applause and many teary eyes in the audience. Tyler, continued Mrs. Dorothy, looking directly at her grandson, you haven't just honored your grandfather's memory. You've transformed his dream into something even more beautiful. Tyler approached his great-aunt with tears in his eyes. Aunt Dorothy, none of this would be possible without the work Gramps had prepared. I just planted the seeds he had readied. And that's exactly how life works, my boy. One generation plants, the next harvests and replants. It's the cycle of continuity. At the end of the party, as the last guests were leaving, the family gathered for an evaluation. It was a total success, said Jennifer, and we made several important contacts, including, added Tyler, the director of the municipal school wants to schedule an official visit to plan educational activities. And Mrs. Constance, who brought the preserves, offered to give regular workshops, added Mrs. Sharon. Uncle Richard, who had spent a good part of the party talking with the guests, was visibly impressed. Guys, you have no idea what I heard today. Several people said this type of project is exactly what the region needed. How so? Asked Mr. Robert. It seems that for years people have felt the lack of a space to value local traditions. The project will not only serve our family, but an unmet demand from the entire community. Uncle David agreed. That's true. And I saw several people asking when the center will be officially open. That gives us extra responsibility, considered Tyler. "We can't disappoint these expectations." "We won't disappoint," said Jennifer confidently. "We have support, resources, and most importantly, a committed team." In the fourth week, the official confirmation arrived. The project had been approved to receive financial support from the state. In addition to the $45,000, they would also be entitled to free technical consulting and promotional support. "Guys, it's official," shouted Tyler when he answered Dr. Margaret's phone call. The celebration was immediate and euphoric. Walter hugged Tyler with tears in his eyes. Jennifer jumped for joy, and even Buddy seemed to understand something very good was happening, running and barking excitedly. "Tyler, what do we do now?" asked Jennifer, still euphoric. "Now we put the project into practice for real. We have the resources to do everything we planned and much more." That evening, there was a special family meeting. All the Mitchells gathered at the property to plan the next steps. "First," said Tyler, organizing a list, "we need to decide on the implementation priorities." "I suggest we start with the structural renovations," said Jennifer. "Improve the main barn, build the accessible bathrooms, create the proper pathways. And simultaneously we can start organizing the first workshops and activities," added Uncle David, "to show that the center is functioning even during the construction." Uncle Richard, now completely converted to the project, made an unexpected suggestion. "What if we created a website to promote the activities and receive scheduled visits?" "Great idea," agreed Jennifer. "I can create a basic site. And I know someone who can help with professional photographs of the space," offered Mrs. Sharon. Mr. Robert was leafing through Grandpa Harold's notebooks with a thoughtful expression. "You know what impresses me the most in this whole story?" "What?" several asked at once. "How Dad managed to foresee all of this. Look at these notes. He had already thought about workshops, partnerships with schools, a seed bank, everything you're implementing now." "Because Gramps wasn't just a dreamer," said Tyler. "He was a visionary. He saw possibilities we couldn't even imagine." "And the best part," added Walter, "is that this is just the beginning. With the approved funds, we can think about future expansions." "What kind of expansions?" asked Ashley, curious. "Well," Walter smiled, "your grandfather had ideas for a second phase of the project. He wanted to create a space for small family events, like rural weddings and birthday parties." "Really?" Jennifer perked up. "That would be incredible. A space for events that celebrates family traditions. And it would generate additional income to maintain the project," observed Uncle Richard, always attentive to the financial side. "Exactly. Your grandfather thought of everything." As the months passed, the Mitchell Family Rural Heritage Preservation Center took shape and gained a reputation. The first official activities began in the 5th month, with traditional cooking workshops taught by the ladies from Aunt Dorothy's church. "How is the demand?" asked Uncle Richard during his monthly follow-up visit. "Above expectations," replied Tyler, showing the activity schedule. "We have workshops scheduled for the next 8 weeks. And the school visits? 3 schools have already booked educational visits, and the university wants to bring a class of agronomy students next month." Jennifer was finishing organizing the permanent exhibition on the history of immigration in the region. "Tyler, come see how the exhibition room turned out." They walked to the space that had been created in the main barn. The walls were covered with old photographs, historical maps, and display cases with period documents and objects. "It looks incredible," said Tyler, impressed. "It looks like a professional museum." "And that's practically what it is," said Jennifer proudly. "A museum of American rural life." "And look who came to visit us," said Walter, pointing to the entrance. It was Dr. Margaret from the state's culture department, accompanied by 2 other people. "Good afternoon. I hope you don't mind our unannounced visit." "Of course not," said Tyler. "It's always a pleasure to have you. I brought 2 colleagues to see the project. This is Dr. Nathan from the Historical Heritage Department, and this is Professor Rebecca, who coordinates rural educational projects." After a complete tour of the facilities, the 3 specialists were visibly impressed. "You have exceeded all expectations," said Dr. Nathan. "The level of organization and quality of the activities is excellent." Professor Rebecca was especially interested in the educational part. I'd like to include this center in our official schedule of educational visits for state schools. Would you be interested?" "Very interested," Jennifer answered quickly. "What would the process be?" "We would conduct a formal evaluation of the educational activities, and if approved, the center would be added to our official list. This would guarantee a steady flow of visitors and also additional support from the state." Dr. Margaret also had a proposal. "We are organizing a state meeting for rural cultural preservation projects. We would like you to present this project as a success model." Tyler looked at Jennifer and Walter with surprise and joy. "It would be an honor." "And there's more," continued Dr. Nathan. "We are considering nominating this center to compete for a National Heritage Preservation Award." "A national award?" "Yes. It's an annual award that recognizes the best cultural preservation projects in the country. The winner receives $100,000 for project expansion." When the technicians left, Tyler, Jennifer, and Walter were silent for a few moments, absorbing the magnitude of what they had heard. $100,000, whispered Jennifer. "And national recognition," added Walter. "Gramps Harold never imagined his project could reach this point," said Tyler, moved. That night, there was another special family meeting. The news of the possible nomination for the national award left everyone euphoric. "My son," said Mrs. Sharon, hugging Tyler, "you have transformed our family." "It wasn't me, Mom. It was Gramps Harold's work. I was just lucky enough to recognize the value of what he had created." "Don't sell yourself short," said Uncle Richard, surprising everyone. "You had the courage to fight for something you believed in, even when all of us were skeptical. That deserves full recognition." Mrs. Dorothy, who had become a constant presence in the center's activities, asked to speak. "My dears, I want to share something with you." Everyone paid attention to the family matriarch. "Yesterday, a lady who visited the center came to me to say thank you. She said that after learning about our story, she also decided to research and preserve her own family's history." "How beautiful," said Jennifer. "And there's more. She told me she talked to her children about the importance of valuing their roots, and that the whole family got together to organize the old documents and photographs that were forgotten in boxes in the attic." Tyler felt a deep emotion upon hearing that. "You mean our project is inspiring other families to preserve their own histories?" "Exactly," confirmed Mrs. Dorothy. "And that moves me deeply, because it means Harold's work is multiplying." Uncle David, who had been one of the quickest to support the project, reflected. "You know, I've been thinking about how we were before all this started. Each of us lived our own lives. We only saw each other on special occasions. We barely talked about important things." "It's true," agreed Mr. Robert. "This project has united us in a way I haven't seen in years." "And not only did it unite us," added Mrs. Sharon, "it gave us a common purpose, something bigger than our individual lives." Jennifer was flipping through a photo album that documented the entire process of implementing the center. "Look," she said, showing a photo from the first visit to the property. "It seems like years ago, but it was only a few months." "A lot has changed," observed Walter. "The property has been completely transformed." "And we have transformed too," said Tyler. "All of us." In the 7th month of the project's operation, confirmation arrived. The Mitchell Family Rural Heritage Preservation Center had been nominated to compete for the National Heritage Preservation Award. The award ceremony would be in Washington, D.C., and 2 representatives from the center could attend. After a family discussion, it was decided that Tyler and Mrs. Dorothy would go as representatives, symbolizing the union between the youngest and oldest generations of the family. "I'm nervous," admitted Mrs. Dorothy on the plane to Washington, D.C. "Me too," said Tyler, holding his great-aunt's hand. "But I think Gramps would be proud of both of us being here representing the family." "I'm sure he would be." The ceremony was moving. There were incredible projects from all over the United States being recognized. When it was time for the Rural Cultural Preservation category, Tyler felt his heart race. "And the winner of the National Rural Cultural Preservation Award is..." The presenter made a dramatic pause. "The Mitchell Family Rural Heritage Preservation Center from Pennsylvania." Tyler and Mrs. Dorothy hugged with tears in their eyes. The entire auditorium rose in applause. On stage, receiving the award, Tyler gave an emotional speech. "This award isn't mine. It's my Grandpa Harold's, who had the vision to preserve our family history and turn it into something that could benefit an entire community. It's my whole family's, who had the courage to believe in a dream. And it's everyone's who supported us on this incredible journey." Mrs. Dorothy also wanted to speak. "On behalf of the Mitchell family, I want to say this award represents more than recognition. It represents proof that when we preserve our roots, we are planting seeds for the future." When they returned home, the reception was triumphant. The entire family was at the property, along with neighbors, collaborators, and friends the center had won over throughout the months. "You did it!" shouted Jennifer, running to hug them both. "We did it," corrected Tyler, "all of us together." Walter approached with Buddy, who ran over to greet Tyler excitedly. "Your grandfather would be beaming with pride," said the neighbor with tears in his eyes. "And look what arrived today," said Jennifer, showing an official letter. "What is it?" "A proposal for an exchange with a similar project in Ireland. They want to exchange experiences about preserving the history of Irish immigration in the United States." Tyler looked at the letter in disbelief. "International exchange? And there's more," added Uncle Richard. 3 different universities have requested permission to conduct academic studies here. "Not to mention," said Mrs. Sharon, "we have workshop bookings for the next 6 months." That night, after all the guests had left and the family was gathered at the property under the stars, there was a moment of silent reflection. "Do you think we managed to fulfill Gramps' dream?" asked Tyler. "We achieved much more than that," replied Mrs. Dorothy. "We turned his dream into reality and even created new dreams for the future. And the best part," added Jennifer, "is that this is just the beginning. With the $100,000 from the prize, we can expand even further." "What kind of expansion do you have in mind?" asked Uncle David. Tyler looked at the starry sky and then at his family. Gramps left notes about a second phase of the project. He dreamed of creating a space to celebrate not just history, but also living family traditions. How so? A place where families could come to celebrate weddings, birthdays, special gatherings, always valuing traditions and creating new memories. "That would be amazing," said Emily excitedly. "And it would generate sustainable income to keep the entire project running indefinitely," observed Uncle Richard. "Exactly. Gramps thought of everything so the center would never depend solely on outside support." Walter, who had been silent listening to the conversation, finally spoke. "There's one thing you still don't know. One last surprise your grandfather left." "What?" several asked at once. "Come, I'll show you." Walter led the entire family to an area of the property that had always been covered by a tarp. "Your grandfather made me promise I would only show this if the project really succeeded, and the family came together around it." He removed the tarp, revealing a small but beautiful structure made of wood in the style of old colonial houses. "A chapel," exclaimed Mrs. Sharon. "Your grandfather built it in the last months of his life. He said he wanted to leave a sacred space on the property where future generations could get married, baptize children, and celebrate special family moments." Everyone fell silent, absorbing the beauty and symbolism of the small chapel. "He really thought of everything," whispered Tyler. "And there's one more thing," said Walter, handing a sealed envelope to Tyler. This letter was to be opened only when the project was consolidated and the family united. With trembling hands, Tyler opened the envelope in front of the whole family. "My dear children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, if you are reading this letter, it means the project I dreamed of so much has become a reality. It means you have understood that our greatest inheritance is not material goods, but our history, our traditions, our love for one another. I built this chapel because I believe every family needs a sacred place where they can gather not only to celebrate, but also to remember who they are and where they came from. This property is no longer just land. It is a spiritual heritage of the Mitchell family, a place where our descendants can always return to connect with their roots. Never forget that you are the fruit of generations of courageous people who came from far away to build a better life. Honor that inheritance by being united, by being generous with one another and always valuing family above all else. May God bless each of you, and may this place always be a refuge of love, history, and traditions for our family. With all my eternal love, Gramps Harold. There were no dry eyes when Tyler finished reading the letter. The entire family embraced in a moment of deep emotion and total unity. "Now I understand," said Uncle Richard, moved. "Dad wasn't just preserving the past, he was building a future for our family. And we will honor that responsibility," said Tyler, determined. "This property will be cared for and loved by the next generations." "And expanded," added Jennifer. "We will continue to grow and welcome more families who want to connect with their histories." Mrs. Dorothy, the matriarch who had seen the entire transformation, offered the final reflection of the evening. "Harold, my dear brother, you achieved what every ancestor dreams of, uniting your family around something greater than themselves and creating something that will last forever." As the months followed, the Mitchell Family Rural Heritage Preservation Center continued to grow and evolve. The second phase of the project was successfully implemented, and the property became a sought-after location for family celebrations that valued traditions. The first wedding in the chapel happened a year later, when Emily, Tyler's youngest cousin, asked to get married there upon turning 18. "I want my wedding to be in the place where our family rediscovered love for one another," she said. The ceremony was simple but moving, with the whole family present and many of the collaborators and friends the center had gained. Walter was the guest of honor, representing Gramps Harold, and Mrs. Dorothy blessed the couple on behalf of the entire family lineage. "This is the moment Gramps dreamed of," Tyler said to Jennifer during the celebration. "A new generation celebrating on the land he preserved, and creating new memories that will one day also be history," she added. The center had become a national reference in family rural heritage preservation. It welcomed visitors from across the country and had inspired the creation of similar projects in various regions of the United States. "Do you know what the most impressive statistic is?" said Dr. Nathan during a follow-up visit. "More than 200 families have already started their own history preservation projects after visiting this center." "You mean Gramps' dream has multiplied 200 times?" asked Tyler, amazed. "At least, because each of those families will inspire others, and so on." Jennifer was finishing a book about the project implementation experience, which would be published by the State University. "Tyler, have you reviewed the last chapter?" "Not yet. How did it end?" "With a reflection on how preserving family history isn't about living in the past, but about building a more solid future." "Perfect." 3 years after the project began, the Mitchell family gathered at the property to celebrate the center's anniversary. It was a tradition they had created to always remember how it all started. "Who wants to give the speech this year?" asked Mr. Robert. "I do," said Ashley, now 20 years old and a history student at the university. She stood before the entire family gathered in the chapel. "When I was younger, I thought history was just old boring stuff we had to memorize in school. But this project taught me that history is about real people who loved, dreamed, fought, and built." "Well said," several approved. "And I learned that when we know our history, we know ourselves better. We know where our strength, our values, our dreams come from." Ashley looked at the portrait of Grandpa Harold in the chapel. "Gramps, you didn't just preserve our history. You taught us that we are part of something much bigger and more beautiful than our individual lives." There were emotional applause, and Mrs. Dorothy, now 81 but still sharp and active, asked to add, "My dears, in all my years of life I have never seen a family transform so much in so little time. You have proven that love and unity can achieve any dream." That night, after everyone had said their goodbyes, Tyler walked alone through the property, reflecting on everything that had happened. Buddy, now older but still loyal, accompanied him on the walk. "We did it, boy," he said to the dog, petting his ears. "We made Gramps' dream come true and created even more than he imagined." Tyler stopped in front of the original house, which had been restored and turned into a rural life museum. Through the windows, he could see the softly lit exhibits. "Gramps," he said, looking at the starry sky, "thank you for believing in me, before I even believed in myself. Thank you for showing me that preserving the past is the best way to build the future." A gentle breeze rustled the trees around him, and Tyler felt a deep peace in his heart. He knew he had honored his grandfather's memory in the best way possible by turning his dream into reality and creating something that would benefit future generations. The Mitchell Family Rural Heritage Preservation Center was no longer just a project. It was a living legacy, a testament to the power of family love and the importance of preserving our roots. And every night, when Tyler returned home, he knew that the next day he would wake up with a purpose, to continue caring for that special place where the past and the future met in perfect harmony, where the Mitchell family history would continue to be written for many, many generations to come. The most beautiful thing of all was knowing that in other parts of the United States, other families were beginning their own preservation projects, inspired by the Mitchells' example. Gramps Harold's dream had spread like seeds in the wind, sprouting in hearts that understood the value of knowing and honoring their own stories. And so what began as the discovery of a hidden shed blossomed into a movement to cherish family history that would touch thousands of lives for many years to come. End of story. Now, tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your sincere words in the comments. Do you think Tyler made the right decision? We love reading your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.